So we ended up staying in Palatine for a good like 6 years. I would say we were in Palatine, Illinois, and like I said during that time, just growing up around that gang culture and whatnot, that pretty much just was the way I was. Started really getting thinking about girls a lot more at that point in sixth grade. Sixth graders usually do. You know, being promiscuous. Going to parties. Having the usual, just when it comes to that, sleeping around with different girls and not really caring about them that much, I guess you could say. But you know, and I'm sure they kind of felt the same way too. But anyway, as a Christian now, looking back then, I realized that I was committing, fornication, and that's something I didn't even know what that was back then. Had I known what that was and had I been saved like I am now, I don't think that would have been an issue. But I would have never probably done it just because I wish I would have waited before I had sex with a girl. I would have waited until I got married. That would have been a beautiful story, but that's not the way it went. You know, Lots of different girlfriends back then, lots of different experiences like that. So, real rebellious during that time, and started getting into drugs during that time. And now we're getting now we're getting into from the age of 12 and then to about the age of 19. I lived a few different cities in Illinois during that time, but mostly Palatine, was where I was and where all my friends were at, and all that. So now we're getting to the point where I actually started thinking more about like who I was and what my life was becoming. Because I had a lot of jobs during that time. I wasn't making much money, but I had, I did buy a car and whatnot, and did all that. But that didn't really make me happy, in life. None of that stuff seemed to fill my emptiness that I had inside me. I felt, by the time I turned 19 years old, I felt like I was just an empty person, just an empty shell. Like nothing I did, nothing I tried was making me happy in life. And to be honest with you, at that point, I started thinking about like, is it even worth living? Is life even worth living? And that was when things got real serious, because I started having thoughts about actually, maybe life isn't worth living. Like if this is what life is, just sleeping around with girls, doing drugs, and hanging out with gang members, if that's what life is, and if that's what all it's gonna be, then after a certain point, you just get to a point where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun. This isn't fulfilling me. And I remember things got so bad, I started feeling inside like I was almost like I was dead inside. Like I felt this just extreme emptiness inside my soul, I guess you could say. I just felt just as empty as a person can feel, and I did get to the point where I didn't want to live anymore. I just didn't want to live anymore. And that is when I started contemplating committing suicide. I was starting to think about different ways that I could make that happen. And I remember that one night, I for whatever reason, I told myself, before I kill myself, I felt like I owed it to God to talk to his son, and to talk and to do what I've been hearing my whole life. There were times when I was a kid where I remember I always had a respect for God. I always turned my back on God, but I always had a respect for God. So when I would see a show about Jesus come on television and stuff, I would watch it for a little bit, but I would do that out of respect, because I didn't want to just turn the channel. So I did have a respect for God, but I had never come to Jesus directly and asked him to save my soul or anything like that. I never did anything like that. And that's why I was so empty, because I didn't do that. And I didn't even know that, but that's why it was. I knew I was seeking something, but I didn't know what it was. I knew that I wanted to feel alive inside myself, but I didn't think I ever could. I just felt like just life was miserable. just what is life all about? What is this? What are we here for? Why are we doing this? This is nothing. What? That's how I felt at the time, you know. What is the point? What's the point? You know. So then I decided that I was gonna kill myself. But before I was gonna kill myself, I decided that you owe it to God to talk to His Son and tell him what you're planning on doing, and telling him how you feel about Him. And I knew that if anything or anyone could save me, I already knew this from seeing God do things before when I was a kid. Like I already mentioned in the other videos, that if anyone could save me at that point, if anyone could feel the emptiness inside me, it would be God. And I knew that. I also thought to myself, if God couldn't do that, for me, then nothing could. Nothing was going to change that. So it would be time to die. And I remember thinking, like, it's time. I'm done. I'm done with life. So either God is going to save me or I'm going to die. And I didn't know which one was going to happen, to be honest with you. So when I went into the room that I went into, I remember everything was dark. For whatever reason, I wanted it to be dark. I just wanted to have a moment with Jesus. You know, I wanted to and I ended up having a lot more than a moment. I ended up staying in that room for I remember 4 hours, I think it was, just sitting in that room. And I remember I started just kind of just talking to Jesus, and then it turned into me spilling my heart out to Jesus, and then it turned into me breaking down into tears and just crying my eyes out, and just I don't know how I remembered how to say it or what came into my mind, but we're going to get into this part here in the next video here.